Stop. Before you keep scrolling, I need you to hear one number: 25%. That is the hunting success rate of the Hadza people, one of the last true hunter-gatherer societies still living the way your ancestors did for hundreds of thousands of years. Researchers followed their hunters for months, tracked every single hunt, counted every return, and 3 out of every 4 times a hunter left camp with a spear and a plan, he came back with nothing. No meat, no meal, just tired legs and a bad story. And yet these people didn't starve. They didn't die out. They survived. They had children, their children had children. And eventually, one of those children, after a very long time and a very long chain of survival decisions, became you. So the question that should be eating at you right now is simple. What were they actually eating the other 75% of the time? Because it wasn't what you think. And once you know, you will never look at a grocery store the same way again. Here's the story nobody tells you about ancient food. Hunting was the exciting part, the dramatic part, the part that got celebrated, remembered, and yes, painted on cave walls. A successful hunt meant meat for the tribe, status for the hunter, and a story worth telling around the fire. But a successful hunt happened roughly 1 in 4 tries, which means the real story of how ancient humans fed themselves isn't about the hunt. It's about everything else. It's about the plan B and the plan C and the plan D that most history books never bothered to write down because it wasn't glamorous enough to remember. That's the story we're getting into today. Let's go back about 2 million years, long before Homo sapiens, before controlled fire, before language probably. A small group of our ancestors, Homo erectus most likely, is moving across an open African landscape under a brutal sun, and something catches their attention. A carcass, something large, killed by something else, a big cat most like, days ago. Other scavengers have already been. Hyenas have stripped the obvious meat. Vultures have picked at what's left. By any reasonable measure, this carcass has nothing left to offer, except for one thing: the bones. Inside those bones, sealed away from every other scavenger on the landscape by the hardest biological material in the body, is marrow. Pure, dense, calorie-rich fat that nothing else on the savannah can get to. Because nothing else on the savannah thought to pick up a rock and use it as a tool. But our ancestors did, and the evidence is right there in the fossil record. Animal bones from 2 million years ago with specific percussion marks on, strike marks from rocks, deliberately aimed at the thickest part of the bone to crack it open and get at what was inside. They were not the hunters that day. They were the last ones to arrive at someone else's meal, and they still found a way to eat. That kind of thinking, the ability to look at a situation everyone else has already written off and find the one angle nobody else has considered, that is not desperation. That is intelligence. That is the earliest version of the human mind doing what it would do for the next 2 million years, finding food where there appeared to be none. But scavenging only gets you so far. The carcass isn't always there. So what then? About 165,000 years ago, on the southern coast of what's now South Africa, a group of humans sat down to eat. The menu that night was not impressive by any dramatic standard. No mammoth, no wild boar, mussels, limpets, sea urchins, cracked open on the rocks, and eaten beside the ocean. We know this because their dinner leftovers are still there, a massive pile of discarded shells accumulated over tens of thousands of years of repeated visits preserved in a cave called Pinnacle Point. And here's what makes this discovery genuinely extraordinary. These weren't desperate people grabbing the only thing within reach. The shellfish in that midden were carefully selected by species. They were harvested at specific times of year when they were fattest, and the people came back, generation after generation, because they had figured something. The ocean doesn't fail. When the hunt fails, and 3 times out of 4 it does, the tide still comes in. This is what archaeologists call a fallback food strategy, a deliberate, intelligent, multi-generational system for feeding a community when the preferred food source disappeared. And shellfish were just the beginning. Because while the hunters were out failing at their 75% rate, the rest of the group, largely women and children, were doing something that kept everyone alive. They were gathering. And what they gathered was far more varied, far more nutritious, and far more strategically important than any history book has ever given them credit for. Tubers, underground storage organs, what we'd now call roots and bulbs, that plants use to survive through drought and winter. They're not exciting. They don't make good cave paintings, but they are dense with calories, available year-round even in dry seasons when everything above ground has died. And the women who knew where to find them and how to cook them were, from a pure survival standpoint, the most valuable members of any hunter-gatherer group. The Kung people of the Kalahari get roughly 60 to 80% of their calories from plant foods gathered, not hunted. Not because they can't hunt, because plants are reliable and animals are not. Then there were insects. Before you make a face, and yes, I know you're making a face, consider this. A handful of termites contains more protein per gram than the same weight of beef. They require no hunting. They don't run away. They don't outmaneuver you. They are simply there in enormous quantities, available to any one patient patient and observant enough to find them. Across sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Mesoamerica, insects have been a documented food source for tens of thousands of years. Termite, grasshoppers, beetle larvae, caterpillars, not eaten reluctantly as a last resort in genuine starvation, eaten deliberately, seasonally, as a preferred high-protein food source. The ancient world didn't have a protein problem. It had a protein source that modern Western culture decided was disgusting roughly 5 minutes ago in historical time. And for a moment, sit with that, because there's something quietly remarkable about what's being described here. While the hunters were out, spears in hand, tracking something fast and dangerous across difficult terrain with a 1 in 4 chance of success, the people back at camp were running what was effectively a sophisticated food supply system. A system with multiple redundancies. If the hunt fails, there are tubers. If the tubers are out of season, there are shellfish. If the coast is too far, there are insects. If the insects aren't running, there are berries, nuts, seeds, leaves, and the slow, patient knowledge of exactly which plants in this specific landscape are edible, which are medicinal, and which will kill you if you get them wrong. That knowledge accumulated and refined across thousands of generations, passed from mother to daughter by demonstration rather than written instruction, was the real food security of the ancient world. It wasn't the hunt, it was the system. Which brings us to the most important survival behavior in the entire ancient food story, one that has almost nothing to do with what humans ate and everything to do with how they shared it: food sharing. In virtually every hunter-gatherer society ever studied, a successful hunt doesn't just feed the hunter's family, it feeds everyone. The meat is distributed across the group. The hunter who brings back the kill gains status, but not extra food. This is not generosity in the modern sense. This is insurance. Because tomorrow, that hunter might come back empty-handed, and when he does, he will eat because someone else succeeded today and shared it. The entire community is one continuous, mutual guarantee against individual failure. In a world where failure happens 75% of the time, you survive not because you are the best hunter, but because you are part of a group that shares. So here is what the grocery store never shows you. Every item on those shelves exists because somewhere in your ancestral past, a human being figured out how to find food in a landscape that wasn't giving it up easily. The marrow inside the bone, the shellfish at the tide line, the tuber 3 feet underground, the termite mound at the edge of the dry season, none of it was found accidentally. All of it was found by people who were hungry, creative, and paying very close attention to the world around them.